Welcome to Experimental, the science show where women torture men with big pricks. Men lift other men's kilts in search of intellectual satisfaction, and goats get all stiff and fall over. Coming up, conclusive proof from the test department that toast really does land butter side down. And we move the location of the penis back to its rightful place. But first to Dublin, Ireland, where Experimental is asking a pointed question. What don't you like about going to the doctors?
Needles.
The needles.
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 Cold hands.
Hang on, what was that?
Needles.
All right, that's better. Yeah, no one likes being jabbed, especially when it's what the medics call an intramuscular injection, i.e. in the bum. But hey, at least you're getting your medicine, aren't you? Well, not always, according to the research of a woman who's pricked more bums than most, Dr. Victoria Chan of the Adelaide and Meath Hospital in Dublin.
I have personal experience of patients having pain medication or anti-nausea medication injected, and an hour later the nurse would come back to me and say that it didn't work. The patient is still feeling pain, the patient is still feeling sick.
It used to be that bums were a really good place to inject drugs. The problem is that bums are changing. In the West, at least, backsides are getting fatter, which means that needles will have to penetrate further to deliver the drug to the underlying muscle.
Now, this is a 3 centimeter length needle, or 1 1/4 inches, which is the approximate length of the most commonly used needle for intramuscular injections around the world. Now, what the needle is going to do is go through the skin, through the layer of fat, and into the muscle. Depending on how much fat is overlying the muscle will dictate whether this needle is long enough to reach the muscle.
So maybe, and you are not going to enjoy this, the needle is not long enough. To find out, Dr. Chan enlisted 50 patients, each willing to allow her to add a little extra something to their normal bum jab.
Each patient received the medication that was prescribed by their physician along with a small amount of air so that we can see a black air bubble on the CT scan.
But isn't that deadly?
No, not at all. First of all, it's a small amount of air, and also when we are injecting, we pull back on the syringe so that we know we're not in a blood vessel, because it's only if we inject air into a blood vessel that might be a little bit dangerous.
Only very slightly inflated by Dr. Chan's needles, the patients were inserted into a CT scanner, which revealed where the bubble solution ended up.
So what you see on this screen here is the CT scan. You can see here that this is the skin, this is the layer of fat, and this is one of the gluteal muscles of the bum. This black thing here is the air bubble that we had included with each injection to the patient. This air bubble has remained in the fat, so this would be considered a failed intramuscular injection because the medication has not reached the muscle where it's supposed to.
In fact, of her 50 bottoms, she found out that the right amount of bubble solution reached the muscle in only 56% of male behinds and only 8% of female butts, which is a bit of a bummer.
When we look at men and women, women in general have more fat around their bum than men, but a patient does not necessarily need to be obese in order for the injections to fail. The size of the needle is only 3 centimeters or 1 1/4 inches, which isn't that big to begin with.
You know what's coming, don't you?
What we need is longer needles. For example, a 5 centimeter length needle as opposed to a 3 centimeter length needle.
But just how much bigger is a 5 centimeter needle?
That
Is it
looks
necessary?
really intimidating. It's very long.
Oh my God! No, I'd rather that one than that.
That one.
Yeah, that looks worse.
Thicker, it's going back to the Victorian ages, isn't it?
it doesn't need to go in that deep.
Yeah.
No, give me the old one, please. It's a big one.
So the moral of this pointy problem is, if you want your medicine, but you don't want to be pricked by one of Dr. Chan's extra long needles, you better get your bum into shape. In a moment, we're off to Japan to meet a scientist who's got a smaller chopper than James Bond. But before we get too excited, let's retire to the test department for a nice cup of tea and the answer to one of science's greatest questions. It's happened to us all. You're lost in a juicy mag, you reach out for your toast and knock it off the table. Sod's Law says it will always land butter side down. But will it? Enter the Toast Tester 3000 machine. The question: out of 100 pieces of toast, how many will land butter side down? And the answer? A staggering 89%. So toast does appear to land butter side down. But why? Well, here's our theory. A piece of toast falling from a table 76 centimetres high will rotate through approximately 180 degrees, which is why it lands butter side down. So, if we double the height of the table, will it land butter side up? Let's see. Amazingly, when we dropped our toast from twice the standard height, it landed butter side up 81% of the time. So, toast eaters of the world, you have two choices. Double the height of your table, or place the toast on your plate, butter side down. From solving the problems of falling toast, Experimental has headed to Japan in search of a man who thinks he can solve this, the Tokyo rush hour.
You can't go in the direction you want because you're pushed with the flow of people.
Yeah, and people bump into you. It can be painful, especially if it's a girl, because you get hit by a bag.
Someone stepped on my foot with heels once, and that was very painful. I cut my foot.
Even after midnight in this popular part of Tokyo, there's still lots of people and far too many cars. Someone should do something about it.
Well, thankfully, somebody has. Here in Matsumoto, at the edge of the Japanese Alps, a new invention is taking off, and it's set to help you rise above the rat race, literally. It's called the Gen H4, and it's the brainchild of inventor Genai Yanagasawa, better known to his friends as Gen.
It's the smallest one-man helicopter in the world. It took us 15 years to develop. It's very light and very small. You fly it in a small space. Anyone can ride it, and I'd like everybody to be able to use it as casually as you'd ride a bike.
It's so light that you don't need a pilot's license to fly it, and the controls are unlike any other helicopter in the world. They're simple.
You control the height by moving this throttle, and that means you control the height with just one hand. There's one bar, and that controls direction. It's directly attached to the rotors, and if you keep it straight, you hover on the spot. When you want to move backwards, you just push the bar forwards, and if you want to go forwards, you just do the opposite. And that's all there is to controlling it.
Thanks to those pesky laws of physics, when you spin something with a motor, the motor itself tends to spin in the opposite direction. Standard helicopters solve this problem with a second vertically mounted rotor on the tail, which keeps the helicopter body still. Gen's helicopter doesn't have a tail, but it solves the problem in a different way. The two sets of blades spin in opposite direction, so the twisting force of each rotor on the body is cancelled out, giving it perfect balance.
Ever since I was very small, I always wanted to go into the sky. I think it came from reading the tales of the Arabian Nights, and the idea of flying carpets stuck in my mind.
When designing his flying carpet, Gen started with a blank piece of paper and built up the features of his chopper around 4 super light engines. Gen's engines are a miniature engineering wonder. They weigh just 3 kilos, but can produce 10 horsepower each, making them one of the highest power-to-weight ratio motors in the world. The Gen H4 is now available to buy, but it will set you back a cool 3.5 million yen. That's around £19,000. It's a lot of money, but would you be tempted?
If it was a two-seater, yeah?
Yeah, if it was a 2-seater.
Or a 4-seater, so the whole family could ride in it. Oh, but then it would just be an ordinary helicopter, wouldn't it?
About 3 million yen? That's quite affordable. Can I really buy it for about 3 million yen?
That's cheaper than a car, yeah, wicked.
It's great, I want one. I want one too. With this, when there's an earthquake. You're right, you could escape. There's so many earthquakes in Japan.
So, a thumbs up from the Tokyo commuters. But before you get all excited, there is one tiny drawback. The Gen H4 is a bit of a fair weather freak. We've had to film it indoors today because it's a little bit windy. And that's all it takes to throw this little chopper into a tiz.
The weight is still a bit too small against the strong wind. I feel it's probably a little bit weak. For this, we're developing a helicopter with an integrated automatic control system, so it can tolerate a strong wind. And I think it will be better with this in the future. I wanted to create a one-man helicopter that anyone can ride, not only the rich people, but I want everyone to use this as you might ride a bike. My dream is that everybody flies above the cities like dragonflies. I'm working really hard for such a dream.
Hello!
Still to come on Experimental, TV dinner for life, goats that just fall at your feet. But first, we're off to the test department to look where no man should look. The demonstrators are getting excited with the arrival of Hamish McQuasion, a renowned scientist with an interest in the internal pressure of bagpipes. But that's not what the test department are interested in. They want to know if it's true that Hamish has a tattooed thigh, a secret that Hamish does not seem too keen to reveal. Sometime later, when Hamish heads for the showers, our test department demonstrators decide to wreak their revenge. What our two demonstrators want to know is just how fast a Highlander would have to be flung before his kilt would rise and reveal his all. And for that, they're building a Kilt Riser 3000 machine. The theory is that if you spin a Scotsman, centripetal force will cause his kilt to rise.
Oh, that's better.
Let's see. At 10 revolutions a minute, things don't look so good. But at 15 revolutions, there is a definite stirring of the cloth. So what happens when we twiddle the kilt tester's knob all the way? So there you have it. Conclusive proof that a Scotsman will reveal all at precisely 23 revolutions per minute. Meet Charles Darwin, Mr. Survival of the Fittest. The theory being that if you can't avoid being eaten, you're history.
It's a bit more complicated than that.
It must be. Otherwise, it could not explain the continued existence of these little creatures. Tennessee fainting goats, favourite flock of farmer Gene McNutt.
Tennessee myotonic goats pretty much like any other goat, except when they get frightened, they'll fall over into somewhat of a faint, stiffen. A few seconds, they get up and act like just any other goat. They'll carry on and go on.
In fact, the goats don't actually faint. Rather, as soon as they get scared, their muscles stiffen up and they fall over. It doesn't hurt them in any way, and after a few seconds, they get up and trot away as if nothing had happened. However, those few stiff seconds is all it takes for a predator to have an easy meal. So what's causing these goats to drop at the worst possible moment? Meet fainting goat whiz kid, Dr. Al George.
The fainting goats have a condition known as myotonia, which is an inherited abnormality in muscle, which leads to a disturbance in the ability of the muscle to relax. This leads to their characteristic falling behavior in the field.
Oh dear, seems Mr. Darwin's theory is in trouble. Surely the myotonic goat is no more than lion fast food. Lion roars, goat falls down, lion eats. This is not survival of the fittest, Mr. Darwin. It's survival of the unfittest.
Shows how little you know about my theory. Now, sod off, I'm eating.
OK, so we can't disturb the great man. So let's go to the next best thing. Darwin expert Professor Abbott.
Survival of the fittest was a phrase that Darwin was initially uncomfortable with, and he eventually accepted it because of its simplicity. Imagine a population of, say, deer. And some of these deer run slowly and some run faster. And imagine there's a predator chasing these deer. It's a very simple idea that the individuals that run faster from the predator are more likely to survive and thus will fit better in their environment because of that trait of running faster. And if this happens over time, then eventually the population will evolve and become better fit. In other words, will be made up of nothing but fast-running deer.
Which cannot be why these goats are surviving. Let's face it, running away isn't an option for them. So what is their secret? Are they poisonous or something?
If you think about it, if you open up your fridge and you look inside your fridge and you open up your vegetable drawer, what you see is the product of hundreds, if not thousands of years of natural selection by breeders. With the myotonic goats, presumably the farmers that breed myotonic goats find the fainting or myotonia to be a trait that they actually desire in their goats. That's still natural selection, but the agent of selection, the hand of selection, is the farmer himself rather than a predator or a parasite.
I couldn't have put it better myself, lad.
So, far from being a proof that Darwin was wrong, the so-called fainting goat wins out over its rivals for two reasons. Partly because their condition makes for larger muscles and therefore more meat, which farmers like, and partly because they live in a special environmental niche where the predators are kept out by a man-made fence. Say goodbye to the fence, and we'll say goodbye to the myotonic goat. In a moment, we're going to discover where the male member is located. But first, we're off to the test department to find out just how quickly we can poison one of our favourite demonstrators. In the test department, they're throwing a party. And no party is complete without cakes. But Horace fumbles and suddenly, disaster strikes. Clearly, he's heard the old wives' tale that if you pick food up off the ground, within 5 seconds, it's safe to eat. The question is, Horace, is it true? The thought behind this pearl of wisdom is that it takes time for nasties like bacteria and viruses to stick to things. Pick it up quickly, and they won't have had a chance to hitch a ride. So, how can we test this theory on our party cakes? Well, how about using one of these, a UV black light? Pretty nifty, isn't it? Instead of using bacteria, we're going to use this fake gunk. If any of it ends up on our cakes, it will glow bright blue under the UV light. So, let's begin the test. The cake on the right is getting just 3 seconds of contact with the gunk, while the cake on the left gets a full-on 10-second plunge. More than enough for any nasty to stick to it. Now let's give them a flash with the light to see if there are any blue bits showing, and yes, both the 3 and the 10-second cake are now nicely iced with our fake bacteria. And, no doubt, with the real stuff too. So next time you drop some food on the floor, keep it well away from your chompers. Or suffer the consequences. Finally, on experimental, we've travelled to Frankfurt in Germany, a city where the women have some rather odd theories about their menfolk.
Their brain dropped down to their pants. Sorry, but that's how I feel about them, okay?
Oh, okay, fair enough. But is there any truth in this slightly bigoted assessment of the male of the species? Let's meet a man who's interested in finding that out. Dr. Christian Kell, a neuroscientist who's determined to find out not just how much of a man's brain is in his pants, but which bit of his brain is down there. It's all part of a project to map which parts of the brain are used for interpreting the sensation of touch. To achieve it, they used a functional magnetic resonance imaging machine, a man and a toothbrush. The machine can see inside your brain as it works. The toothbrush, well, that can stimulate both your toe and other bits you might want to study. For years, we've known the somatosensory cortex, the strip of brain running up from behind the ears to the top on each side, is concerned with touch. And since the 1950s, scientists have assumed that the parts of the cortex that deal with the parts of the body are laid out like this. The head here, the hands here, the legs here, and for some strange reason, that part that should be between the legs, here, underneath the bit that deals with your feet. So what did Dr. Kell and his toothbrush find out? Was the old diagram correct?
There is a huge area devoted to the analysis of the hand, and lateral to it, another big area, which is the representation of the human face. This is due to the fact that in these regions, hand and face, you've got lots of receptors, you've got a high degree of discrimination in these areas. So there's more need of analysis, more need of computation. So the areas in which those body regions are represented are bigger than other body parts.
If our bodies were in proportion to the amount of brain dedicated to them, your average human would look like this. All head and hands.
Hi.
Nice. But what about the penis, which, according to the textbooks, should be beneath the bit of brain dealing with the feet? Let's find out how much brain that takes up.
We stimulated the tip of the penis and the shaft of the penis, as you can see here in green and in blue, and those two activations lie in the same spots. Therefore, the representation of the penis is very small.
But that's not all. According to the past experts, the area of the brain that should be lighting up is a bit beneath the area that deals with the toes. But when Dr. Kell's assistants started stimulating his subjects, they found that the bit that lit up was in fact right here, where it should be, between the bit of the brain that controls the abdomen and the bit dedicated to the legs. In so doing, they rewrote 40 years of medical knowledge.
We put the penis back where it belongs.
Welcome to Experimental, the science show where men dance with robots and eat on the toilet. Later on, we'll be switching off this man's brain, finding out why this man wants to replace pilots with rat brain cells, and we'll attempt to break a world record by making ice cream in under 18.78 seconds. But first, let's dance. Ah, what grace, what style, what beauty. It can only be ballroom dancing, Experimental's all-time favourite way of moving about to classical music. But like so many things in life, it's not much fun on your own. And when all the ladies are taken, even the great Fred Astaire would be left twiddling his thumbs. Well, thank God we're in Japan, because help is close at hand for those left behind by the pretty girls. Here amidst the beautiful Japanese mountains, robotics experts have rustled up a girl who just can't say no. She's a full-sized waltzing robot with the catchy name of PBDR, or Partner Ballroom Dance Robot. Part Marilyn Monroe, part Mickey Mouse, and just a hint of the Terminator. She's the brainchild of this man, Professor Kazuhiro Kasuge, from the University of Tohoku.
This robot is called Pinky, and this is Blue. They're partner ballroom dance robots. They were designed to waltz with male dance partners. The robot moves with 3 specially designed wheels that allow them to move anywhere on a flat surface. Also, around the waist, there's a force sensor that measures the force applied to the upper arm. Using this sensor, the robot can predict the sort of movements the partner would like to do, allowing them to move with the partner.
Like all dancers, Pinky needs to get in the mood to perform at her best. So we decided to set the ambience with a little light, a little smoke, and of course, a handsome partner. This is Takeda, a research assistant at the university. He had to take dancing lessons to help with the development of the robot, and he's the only man that Pinky moves her gears for. Waltzing involves improvisation around a number of set moves. For the robot to follow Takeda's lead, she has to be able to read subtle cues in his body language. In total, she knows 5 different moves and needs to be able to anticipate and react to each one successfully to waltz convincingly. It's all very clever stuff. But Kasuge has more than just ballroom dancing on his mind. Pinky is a showcase for technology that could help the elderly or less mobile. The same hardware that puts her into a world-time spin goes into this, an intelligent walking frame that puts on the brakes when you want to stand up, and can even sense when you're about to take a tumble.
Robots are the only devices that can interact with our environment. So robots are the final, ultimate systems that can physically assist your life. And it's for that reason we are doing our research.
Unfortunately, Pinky is strictly research, so our lonely hearts can only dream of taking her for a spin. But if she were available, would you be tempted?
Humans and robots are fundamentally different, so it might be good for an experience, but I'd have to think twice if I had to dance with a robot forever.
And who could blame him, especially when there are so many pretty girls left to fight for. In a moment, we're off to the laboratories at the University of London to look behind this chap's eyes. But first, let's go and have lunch with Horace in the test department. When Horace is not in the test department labs or accosting women in the name of science, you'll often find him at his desk, writing articles for learned journals. It's a desk like any other, but pride of place is given to Horace's photo of Dr. Charles Gerber. You see, it was Dr. Gerber's seminal work in 2002 on germ counts in the American office that changed Horace's life, leading him to totally re-evaluate his attitude to hygiene. You see, Dr. Gerber showed us that the filthiest place in the average office was the telephone handset, clocking up a score of around 25,000 bacteria per square inch, which explains why Horace is being so careful.
Hello. Hello.
Next up is the desk, with around 21,000 bacteria per square inch, a lot worse than the keyboard and the mouse, which have a population of between 3,300 and 1,700 bacteria per square inch. All of this makes the office a pretty dirty place, which is why when it comes to lunch, Horace likes to have it in the cleanest place in the office. That's right, the toilet seat, which on average has only 49 bacteria per square inch, 400 times cleaner than the desktop. Still to come from the test department, our answer to that vexing question. Will I get wetter if I run or walk in the rain? And our world record attempt. Can we make edible ice cream in less than 20 seconds?
Hello.
We spend 9 days a year doing it. We do it at home, in the office, and even out in public. It's usually over very quickly. And no, it's not sex. It's blinking. Not the subject of cutting-edge scientific research, you might think. Well, you'd be wrong. Believe it or not, no one knows why we blink, but don't notice it. Well, no one knew until this woman came along. Davina Bristow from the Department of Neurology at University College London. She's finally managed to shed light on the mystery.
What we found was that each time you blink, the visual parts of your brain are actually suppressed.
Blinking is like switching on the eye's windscreen wipers. The eyelids wiping away the gunk and grit that would otherwise obscure our view. That, scientists knew. It's why we don't notice ourselves blinking that was the puzzle.
It's actually quite a big interruption to our visual input, because every time you blink, you're basically turning the lights off for about 140 milliseconds, which, if you actually did turn the lights off, would be really, really obvious and you would notice it. And yet somehow this happens every 5 seconds and we don't notice it. And so we're wondering, how is it that we don't notice our blinks and what's going on in the brain?
Davina and her team set out to discover why humans aren't disturbed by these mini blackouts. This is Ian, our volunteer blinker. He's an average guy. Like most of us, he blinks 10 to 15 times a minute. And each blink lasts between 100 to 150 milliseconds. To find out what goes on in his head, other than girls and football, Davina put him in an MRI scanner.
There we go. So just shuffle up a little bit.
Once lying down on a pricey bit of brain probing kit, Davina had to devise a way of seeing if Ian's brain reacted differently if he blinked with the lights on. And that's what this light on a stick is all about. The idea is to stuff it in Ian's mouth so it lights up his eyes from the back. That means when he blinks, the light levels in the eyes will remain the same. Now all we have to do is see what goes on inside his brain. And the results were astonishing.
What we found was that parts of our visual system appear to be sort of shut down or suppressed while we're blinking.
The bits of Ian's grey stuff that turn off are all to do with the visual system. The effect of them turning off means not that things go black, but we're simply not aware that there's been any change from the moment the eyes begin to close to the moment they open again. The eyes close for nearly 1 day a month, 9 days a year. That's around 2 years in a lifetime spent in this semi-conscious state. You might feel a bit annoyed that you're missing so much, but put your mind at ease. You see, this is what you'd see if your brain did not switch off as you blinked. And when you consider we blink 20,000 times a day, it would probably drive us mad.
So, you might ask, what's the point of this? Why do we not want to notice our blinks? Well, if you imagine turning the lights off every 5 seconds for your entire life, that would be incredibly disruptive to your, just everything.
So it seems the old saying is true. Blink, and you really do miss it. Still to come on Experimental, flying rats, erupting water, smashing bananas, and why women love chocolate.
Don't try this at home.
But first, question. Can anyone be bothered to go out and get some milk from the shop in the rain? Nah. But if you were one of our test department demonstrators, the question would have been slightly different. Who will get wetter? The one who runs to the shop or the one who walks? Will the slower one get more on the head but less on the chest, while the fast one will be in the rain less but get a wet tummy? To solve this universal dilemma, we built this device, called the Precipitation Monitor 3000, also known as some sprinklers and a few bits of wood. So here's the experiment. First up, walking through the rain. And here's the result. Using their Moisture Analyzer 3000 machine, the test department found that Horace absorbed 250 millilitres of rain. Now let's see what happens to Horace when he runs through our machine. Go on, fast as you can, lad. After 10 minutes in the moisture analyzer, we find that when running, Horace absorbed only 180 millilitres. Scientific proof, if you need it, that running through the rain keeps you drier. Now, what about that milk? In a moment, we'll be flying high with rat bits and having fun with microwaves. But first, let's cool off.
Hello.
Welcome to the ice cream capital of the world. No, not Italy, Bristol, in the west of England. Because when it comes to making ice cream, physicist Peter Barham from Bristol University has it licked. He scooped the world record for making a litre of ice cream in the shortest possible time. And it's all thanks to one very special ingredient: liquid nitrogen.
Done.
18.78 seconds. How cool is that? According to the scientists, ice cream is a mixture of 3 states of matter: solids, liquids, and gas.
The solid is the ice crystals and the fat particles, which also crystalline. Liquid is some of the sugar, which is dissolved in water. A very, very thick mixture, a bit like golden syrup, only much, much, much thicker. And of course, the air, which is the air bubbles, and that makes the gas. So 3 phases all mixed together, and the way in which they mix together makes good ice cream or bad ice cream. So the key ingredients of ice cream are cream, funnily enough, which has got fat particles suspended in water with a bit of sugar dissolved in the water as well. And then a bit more sugar, because we need extra sugar to make it work properly. And that's basically all ice cream mixture is, although you can add flavouring and you can add nuts and chocolate and things, but they don't really have any effect on the physics of ice cream.
The key to making good ice cream is to keep the ice crystals small so you don't notice them in your mouth. And that's where the liquid nitrogen, at an amazing minus 196 degrees Celsius, comes in.
What it will do is make my ice form very quickly, very, very, very small crystals. Which you can see it's gone really cold now, and I've got my ice cream. My ice cream actually has gone so cold that it's actually too cold to eat now, but it'll warm up again to make good ice cream in a minute.
But liquid nitrogen's not just good for making ice cream. If you're mad enough to play with something that can freeze you in seconds, you can have all sorts of fun.
Liquid nitrogen is really, really cold, 196 degrees below 0 Celsius. I'll show you. If you put a banana in there, that boils the nitrogen away. Put some wood over here, and I'll get a nail a moment, and I can take my banana out now. It's cooled down, and we now have actually a split banana, a banana split, very quick way of making one. And I can take my nail and I can try and hammer it with a banana. And 2 things will happen: either it will go in, or I will end up with breaking the banana in pieces. But and the banana eventually falls apart as a hammer. But that's how cold liquid nitrogen is. You can make a banana into a hammer.
Enough of the DIY. What does this liquid nitrogen ice cream actually taste like? Will it bring Dr. Barham Knickerbocker glory, or just an icy stare?
Liquid nitrogen ice cream, sir?
Yes, it's official. Dr. Barham's nitrogen-powered ice cream is not only the fastest in the world, but 5 out of 5 of his own physics students agree it also tastes pretty cool. If ice cream's not your thing, then how about chocolate? Here's a question. Why does this and this have the same effect on one of these? The answer is that both men and chocolate give her that loving feeling. Let's forget about the man. What is it about a piece of chocolate that's such a turn-on for the ladies? The answer lies deep within its metabolic structure, an interesting chemical called phenylethylamine. You may not have heard of it, but it's very important in making you feel good, in that loving kind of way. That's why nibbling on a lump of chocolate can trick you into thinking you're nibbling on something else. Before we finish on experimental, we'll be looking into the future of aviation. 25,000 rat brain cells in a pink dish. But first, let's do dangerous things at the test department. There's nothing a test department tester likes more than a heap of sugar in a cup of tea. The perfect way to kick off a day at the lab. But welcome to Hell's Kitchen. Imagine if you woke up to a cup of tea that did this. So what was that all about? Well, you've probably been told that water boils and turns to steam at 100 degrees Celsius. And in your kettle, that's pretty much what happens. Boiling occurs when a liquid, water, turns into a gas, steam. But in order for this change to happen, the water not only has to reach 100 degrees centigrade, but it also has to have some tiny impurities within it, such as a grain of dirt, around which the steam can form. So if your kettle is super clean and your water is super pure, then there is nothing around which the steam bubbles can form. You can then create superheated water, water that's liquid at over 100 degrees centigrade. The key is to use a microwave. It heats quickly without disturbing the liquid.
Do not try this at home. It's completely irresponsible and very dangerous.
Taking the professor seriously and donning the correct safety equipment, our test department tester can now take out our superheated water. Looks pretty normal, doesn't it? But add some sugar, effectively an impurity around which the steam can form, and the results are pretty explosive. Now that's what I call a quick cuppa. If you've got an X and Y chromosome with the resultant hairy chest, it's a pretty good bet that you've fancied yourself at the controls of one of these things. And it's a pretty safe bet that the closest you'll ever get is a computer and a CD-ROM. However, that's a lot closer than most rats get, unless they live here at the University of Florida. You see, it's this little chap and his mates, or rather cells from their brain, that are in charge of flying this simulator. It's all the work of Dr. DeMaas, a neuroscientist who's interested not only in how the neurons in brains work, but in finding out ways of making them work for us.
The basic goal of this experiment was to study ways that you could interface a neural culture, a living neural culture, to a device, an airplane, and have it learn to fly.
What Dr. DeMaas has done is got the neurons in this dish to think. That's right, no one has told them how to fly a plane. They've worked it out by themselves. So how do you make a rat-brain pilot?
We take a little bit of tissue from the rat's cortex. So if you think of a brain, you have the wrinkly portion of your brain. We take a little bit of that tissue and we digest it with an enzyme to essentially give us the individual neurons separated into a liquid.
This brain soup, literally 25,000 individual unconnected neurons, is placed on top of a matrix of 60 electrodes. Dr. DeMaas now has the beginnings of a brain that's ready to teach itself to fly. All he has to do is plug the matrix into his computer and set the program off. Almost immediately, the individual neurons begin to form a complex network, the beginnings of a thinking brain. What's happening is that the cells are receiving signals from the computer and sending their own signals back to the computer. If they send the wrong signals, then this happens. But with time, the neurons manage to form a network that will react correctly to the incoming signals and so keep the plane in the air.
Ooh, I can fly!
In fact, this mini brain can get so good that it can negotiate mountain ranges and thunderstorms like the best Top Guns around.
I think the most enjoyable part about that particular experiment was the fact that you could take a collection of neurons who didn't know how to do anything and then provide inputs so that over time it could learn to do something. Right? So in the end, you can take one of these networks, plug it into the system, right, and it can fly. It can fly the plane.
You'll be pleased to know that Dr. DeMaas isn't proposing that the next generation of Boeings are piloted by a dish of rat brain. But what this pink rat cyborg is doing is to help lift the lid on the way the brain learns at a cellular level. So perhaps in the future, when a real pilot does this and gets a dunk on the head, we may have a better idea of how to fix him up and get him flying again.